It started with an innocent curiosity, an aimless evening in front of my computer, scrolling through forums, clicking on links to obscure websites, and watching bizarre YouTube videos. It wasn't unusual. I've always been the type to wander down digital rabbit holes. But that night, I found myself diving into something far darker than I'd ever anticipated. I was on a thread about forgotten corners of the internet. Someone had posted a link with no description, just the words, "Enter at your own risk." Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The page that loaded was sparse. A black background with a single blinking cursor, and the text, "Ask the right question, and you'll see the truth." Beneath it, a text box invited input. I hesitated. The vagueness was unsettling, but also irresistible. I typed, "What is the truth?" and hit enter. The screen flickered. For a second, it looked like my webcam had turned on, but it shut off before I could react. Then text began to appear, line by line. "You are being watched. They see what you hide. You cannot escape them. Would you like to know who?" A chill ran down my spine. I laughed nervously and told myself it was just a prank, a clever script designed to freak people out. Still, I couldn't resist typing, "Yes." This time the response was instant. The screen filled with static, then resolved into a grainy video feed. It took me a moment to realize what I was looking at, my own bedroom. The angle was slightly skewed, as if captured by a hidden camera. My heart started pounding. "Nice trick," I muttered aloud, trying to convince myself someone had hacked my webcam. But I hadn't seen any light indicating it was active, and the angle, it wasn't from my computer. A new line of text appeared. "Keep going?" I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Something told me to close the browser, to shut my laptop and walk away. But I couldn't. My curiosity had its claws in me. I typed, "Yes." The video feed changed. Now it showed another room. It was dimly lit, but I could make out the figure of a man sitting at a desk, his face obscured by shadows. He was staring at a screen, but there was no keyboard or mouse in front of him. Just his hands, resting motionless on the desk. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The man's head tilted slightly, as if he'd sensed me watching. Then, in one fluid motion, he turned and stared directly into the camera. His eyes, cold, unblinking, and impossibly dark, seemed to pierce through the screen. My breath caught. He lifted a hand and pointed, not at the camera but at me. The video feed froze, and a single line of text appeared. "He's coming." I slammed my laptop shut and sat there, heart racing, every nerve in my body screaming that I was in danger. I wanted to believe it was just an elaborate prank, but the feeling in my gut told me otherwise. I checked the locks on my doors and windows, turned off every light, and sat in the dark, clutching a kitchen knife. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Eventually, exhaustion overcame fear and I fell asleep. I woke to a strange sound, a faint tapping, like fingernails against glass. My heart leapt into my throat as I realized it was coming from the window behind me. Slowly, I turned. The curtains were drawn, but I could see the faint outline of a figure standing on the other side. Whoever it was, they were impossibly tall, their shadows stretching across the room. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The tapping stopped, replaced by a low, guttural sound, like a growl. Then, a voice, deep and distorted, whispered my name. I bolted out of the room and locked myself in the bathroom, dialing 911 with trembling hands. The operator's calm voice did little to soothe me as I stammered out my address and tried to explain what was happening. "Stay on the line," she said. "Officers are on their way." The growling stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. I pressed my ear to the bathroom door, straining to hear any movement. Nothing. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. When they did, they found no signs of forced entry, no footprints outside the window, nothing to suggest anyone had been there. My laptop was gone, but nothing else had been taken. They chalked it up to a prank or a bad dream, but I knew better. For weeks I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow felt too deep, every silence too heavy. Then, one day, a package arrived on my doorstep. no return address. Inside was my laptop, wiped clean, and a note that read, "You looked too deep. Don't do it again." I moved to a new city, changed my name, and swore off the internet. But some nights I still hear the tapping, faint and far away. And I know he's still watching. The clock read 2:47 a.m. I should have been asleep hours ago, but the blue glow of my laptop screen anchored me to the desk like a curse. It started innocently enough, a random post about an old urban legend on a niche forum I frequented. From there, I clicked a link to a YouTube video, then a Reddit thread, and finally an obscure blog buried so deep in the search results, it felt like finding a dusty book in the corner of an abandoned library. That's when I stumbled upon The Archivist. The blog was amateurish, its design an eyesore of mismatched fonts and broken links. But the posts, they were something else. Each entry detailed fragments of bizarre events, unsolved mysteries, and cryptic tales. Some were plausible, others fantastical, all unsettling. The author's voice was detached, clinical, as if cataloging each story was their duty rather than a creative outlet. The latest post was titled, "Do not open the third file." My curiosity flared. The post described a file, archive3.dat, circulating in hidden corners of the internet. Allegedly, it was cursed, and opening it supposedly unleashed something terrible. Typical creepypasta fare, but the comments made my skin crawl. Dozens of anonymous users shared cryptic warnings. Don't look for it. It's not a joke. You'll regret it. Of course, I downloaded it. I told myself it was all nonsense, just a poorly made hoax to spook thrill seekers. The file was surprisingly easy to find, a single link buried in the blog's code. It was small, less than a megabyte, and carried an innocuous icon of an old floppy disk. My antivirus software flagged it immediately. Potentially harmful. I ignored the warning and quarantined the file manually, telling myself I'd check it out in a sandboxed environment tomorrow. But sleep was elusive. I stared at the ceiling, the hum of my computer still ringing in my ears. That damn file felt like it was calling to me. By 4:15 a.m. I was back at my desk, eyes bloodshot and hands trembling. I booted up a virtual machine, ensuring the rest of my system was isolated, and opened archive3.dat. At first, nothing happened. Then my screen flickered, the virtual machine's desktop dissolving into static. The cursor jerked across the screen, spelling out letters on a black background. "Do you see it?" Before I could react, an image blinked on the screen. A distorted face, its features warped and shifting, stared at me. The eyes were wrong, too wide, too deep. They seemed to pierce through the glass of the monitor, locking onto mine. The air in the room grew heavy. I tried to close the window, but the mouse refused to move. The screen went black again, except for a single line of text. "You brought it here." And then the VM crashed. For a moment, I just sat there, heart hammering. "It's a prank," I muttered aloud, though my voice sounded hollow. I powered off the computer and paced the room, trying to shake the unease crawling up my spine. But then the noises started, a faint tapping. At first I thought it was my neighbors, but it grew louder, more deliberate. It wasn't coming from the walls. It was inside the room. My gaze darted to the closet. It stood ajar, its darkness gaping. I held my breath, straining to hear. A whisper, soft and guttural, slithered into my ears. "Do you see it?" I bolted for the door, wrenching it open and stumbling into the hallway. My apartment was silent, the kind of silence that feels alive. I'd left my phone in the bedroom, but there was no way I was going back in there. Instead, I fumbled for the breaker box and killed the power to the whole unit. Darkness enveloped me. For a moment, I felt safer. Then I heard the tapping again, closer this time. I don't remember how I ended up outside, barefoot and trembling in the frigid air. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the horizon in pale orange hues. I stood there for hours, too afraid to go back in. When I finally mustered the courage, the apartment was exactly as I'd left it. But my laptop, it was on, despite the power cut. The screen glowed faintly, displaying a single folder on the desktop. Archive tray.dat. I deleted everything. The file, the virtual machine, even the hard drive. I scrubbed my system clean and vowed to stay away from the darker corners of the internet. But it didn't matter. The tapping never stopped. It followed me, growing louder at night, always accompanied by that whisper, "Do you see it?" I've moved twice since then. New cities, new apartments. But the thing persists. The archivist's warning was real, and now I'm trapped. If you've read this far, do yourself a favor. Don't look for the file. Don't even think about it. It's too late for me, but you can still save yourself. And if you hear the tapping, don't open the door. I never considered myself easily frightened. Horror movies were my guilty pleasure, ghost stories were a fun pastime, and I had a healthy skepticism toward anything supernatural. That was until I stumbled upon something online that made every hair on my body stand on end. It began on a sleepless night, scrolling aimlessly through the depths of the internet. I'd fallen into a habit of exploring obscure forums and forgotten websites, each promising hidden knowledge or bizarre curiosities. I stumbled upon a thread on an archaic-looking forum titled The Silent Web. The name piqued my interest. The thread was cryptic, filled with fragmented sentences, peculiar symbols, and links to obscure sites. Most were broken or led to dead ends, but one stood out. A simple hyperlink titled The Quiet Room. Against my better judgment, I clicked. The page loaded painfully slowly. The background was black, the text white, with no images or flashy graphics, just a single sentence in the center of the screen. "Welcome to the Quiet Room. Are you alone?" A simple yes or no button sat beneath the question. A chill ran down my spine, but curiosity outweighed my apprehension. I clicked yes. The screen flickered, then changed. A countdown appeared, 10 o'clock. No explanation, no context, just the timer ticking down. I sat there, unsure of what to do. At 0000, the screen went black, then a single line of text appeared. "Do not turn away." A video began to play. It showed a dimly lit room with no windows and walls that seemed to stretch unnaturally tall. In the center was a wooden chair, its back turned to the camera. The room was silent, so eerily silent I could hear my own heartbeat. Then the chair began to turn. I leaned closer, my breath caught in my throat. The chair turned slowly, creaking with a deliberate, agonizing pace. As it completed its rotation, I saw it was empty. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. A message flashed across the screen. "Look closer." I squinted at the video, and that's when I saw it. A faint outline, a figure sitting in the chair, barely distinguishable from the shadows. My stomach churned. The longer I stared, the clearer it became. A man, gaunt and pale, staring directly into the camera. His eyes were black voids, swallowing the light. The video stopped. The screen displayed another line of text. "Do you see him?" Below were two buttons, yes and no. My hands trembled as I hovered over yes. When I clicked, the site froze for a moment. Then a new countdown began. 48 hours. Confused and unnerved, I closed the browser and shut my laptop. Sleep was out of the question, but I eventually convinced myself it was just an elaborate internet prank. The next day, as the countdown loomed in the back of my mind, strange things began to happen. My phone buzzed with notifications from unknown numbers, each message saying the same thing. "Are you alone?" My reflection in the mirror seemed off, as if it lagged a second behind my movements. The real terror began on the second night. At 003, I awoke to the sound of my laptop powering on by itself. The screen lit up, displaying the Quiet Room's website. The countdown had ended, replaced with another message. "He's here." I heard it then. A faint creaking sound, like a wooden chair shifting under weight. It came from my living room. My body froze, every instinct screaming at me to stay put. But I forced myself to move. Grabbing my phone as a makeshift flashlight, I crept toward the source of the sound. When I reached the living room, I stopped dead in my tracks. My chair, the old wooden one I'd inherited from my grandfather, was turned away from me, facing the wall. It creaked again, as if someone invisible was shifting their weight in it. "Who's there?" I managed to croak, my voice trembling. The chair didn't move. I inched closer, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would burst. Then, as I reached out to touch it, the chair spun around violently. It was empty. Relief mixed with confusion until my phone screen flickered and the Quiet Rooms page appeared again. Another message. "Look closer." Behind me in the phone's reflection, I saw him. The gaunt man from the video, his black eyes fixed on me. I turned, but the room was empty. Panic set in as I backed away, the phone clattering to the floor. Since that night, the Quiet Room has followed me. It's in my devices, my mirrors, even the corners of my vision. I've tried everything to escape it, smashing my laptop, changing my phone, even moving to a new apartment. Nothing works. The creaking chair, the haunting messages, and the gaunt man's void-like eyes are always there. And now, as I write this, I see the Quiet Room's message on my screen. "Are you alone?" For the first time, I'm too afraid to answer.